And for every community, there is a messenger. I mean, just stop and think about the sheer scale of that statement for a second. This is a direct quote from the Quran, and it immediately sets the stage for this massive, universal perspective on divine communication. We aren't just talking about a couple of isolated figures wandering around the ancient world. We're talking about a global, historical phenomenon that literally touches every single corner of humanity.
Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. I am so thrilled to have you here with us. Today, we're unpacking the incredibly rich and, honestly, highly structured concept of how Islam views divine communication. We're going to dive deep into this because understanding this continuous chain of prophets is absolutely crucial if you want to grasp the Islamic worldview as a whole. It's like a giant puzzle, and my goal today is to walk you through it step by step so you can see exactly how all these fascinating pieces fit together.
So, here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with Section 1, Prophets and Messengers. Then we'll look at the shared Abrahamic lineage in Section 2. Section 3 will narrow our focus to Muhammad and the Quran. And finally, Section 4 is going to reveal the core universal message that ties the whole shebang together. Let's get started.
All right, Section 1, Prophets and Messengers. Let's define the basic mechanics of Islamic revelation.
6. Why is this number important? Because in Islam, believing in the prophets isn't just some historical footnote or, an optional piece of theology. No way. It is officially one of the 6 foundational articles of the Islamic faith. If you want to understand Islam at its absolute core, you have to understand its deep reverence for its prophets.
Now, there's a structural distinction here that honestly gets overlooked all the time. Prophets, known in Arabic as al-Anbiya, they spread God's message and basically serve as models of ideal human behavior for their communities. But then you have messengers, or rasul. They go a step further. They're a highly specific subcategory of prophets who actively transmit entirely new divine revelation, mostly through the interaction of an angel. So the easiest rule of thumb here is, all messengers are prophets, but not all prophets are messengers. Makes sense, right?
And Muslims believe a vast, vast number of these prophets existed. We're talking about figures sent continuously to entirely different communities all throughout history. In fact, a lot of these prophets aren't even explicitly mentioned by name in the Quran. The sheer scale of this tradition is truly global. It's this continuous thread woven through the entirety of human civilization, pushing the idea that literally no community was ever left without divine guidance.
Moving right along to Section 2, the shared Abrahamic lineage. Let's shift our focus to how this unbroken chain actually maps onto historical figures you might already know from Judaism and Christianity.
So, in Islamic theology, the first prophet wasn't born, say, thousands of years into human civilization. Actually, scratch that. It starts right at the dawn of time. Adam, the very first human being created by God, was also the very first prophet. From Adam, the timeline flows through successive eras, explicitly including the 48 Jewish prophets and various Christian prophets. And this long, unbroken chain ultimately culminates in the final era with Muhammad as the last prophet.
The deep connective tissue here between the major world faiths is truly fascinating to see. The Quran explicitly mentions a ton of the prophets you likely know from Judaism and Christianity, usually just referring to them by the Arabic versions of their names. For example, the biblical prophet Elisha, he's known in the Quran as Ayasa. The prophet Job, famous for his incredible patience, is recognized and revered as Ayub. Now, this is where you might have a few aha moments regarding which divine texts were given to which famous historical figures. According to Islamic tradition, Moses, or Musa, was given the Torah, which directly aligns with the Torah. David, known as Dawood, was given the Zabur. Those are the Psalms. And Jesus, known as Isa in Arabic, was given the Injil, which is the Gospel. It's a completely unified, interconnected view of historical revelation.
Which brings us to Section 3, Muhammad and the Quran. Here we reach the specific climax of the Islamic prophetic tradition.
Muhammad ibn Abdullah is given the highly specific title Khatam an-Nabiyyin, which translates to the seal of the prophets. In that massive global framework we've been building so far, this title means he is officially designated as the absolute final prophet. So that long, unbroken chain of messengers that started all the way back with the first human Adam, it concludes right here.
And with his final prophet comes a final revelation. The Quran is believed by Muslims to be the literal divine word of God. It wasn't just dropped out of the sky as a complete book in one single moment, though. It was revealed in a series of revelations and carefully written down by Muhammad's companions. Crucially, Islamic tradition holds that the Quran is immutable. That means it is fully protected from any human distortion or corruption, destined to remain exactly in its true original form until the last day.
Now, there is a really interesting theological nuance regarding what happens after the final prophet. On one hand, traditional Muslim practices have historically recognized and venerated saints who came after the time of the prophets. But, on the other hand, modern schools of thought, specifically Salafism and Wahhabism, completely reject this theory of sainthood. It's a fascinating dynamic that shows how different traditions interpret spiritual authority after the seal of the prophets has been placed.
Finally, Section 4, the core universal message. If thousands of prophets were sent across history, what was the singular point of it all?
Despite being sent to entirely different communities, living in totally different eras, and speaking completely different languages, Muslims believe every single prophet preached the exact same immutable core beliefs. The message always centered on the absolute oneness of God and the active worship of that one God. It consistently required the strict avoidance of idolatry and sin and maintained a firm belief in the day of resurrection or judgment and life after death. That right there is the central unifying thread of the entire Islamic prophetic system.
So, I want to leave you with a final provocative thought. If every prophet throughout history, from Adam to Moses to Jesus to Muhammad, was sent to preach the exact same core message, how does this unified view alter our understanding of the differences between world religions? It's a pretty profound thought about the incredible continuity of human belief across millennia, isn't it? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope this journey through the unbroken chain leaves you curious to keep learning